feel like if you think about it, there really is no secrets, nothing to hide. One of my favorite things about A Course in Miracles, it says, if you pretend like everything about you, everything, every shadow, everything that you cringe up about yourself, if you just think that everybody knows everything about you, it's all good. Then you have nothing to hide. Well, one of my friends, I was thinking about this, there are no secrets, and why don't you be yourself? My friend was telling me yesterday, she was like, you share a lot. You're very open. And I was like, me? Like, of course I'm open. I want to connect with people. I don't have anything to hide. Open book mentality. And I feel like that goes back to the conversation of having a mask and feeling like you don't want people to know certain things about you or certain parts of yourself that you just, you're like, this will be so unlovable if I showed this side of myself. But it's really not true. So I think about it from two perspectives. I think about it from a physical perspective, and then I think about it from a spiritual perspective. So I'll start with physical because that's always more tangible. Physical perspective is like you walking into the doctor's office. You walk into the doctor's office and the doctor is automatically profiling you, metabolic profile. Okay, I'm looking at the complexion, I'm looking at their eyes, what's going on. We got rings around the eyes. Do we have what's the hair like? What is the muscle mass like? What is the weight distribution? And then the posture. What's the posture like? The breathing and the tone of voice. All of these things, looking at someone's health, it can tell you so much about where that person is. And why do they do that? Because they're trying to get down to some underlying symptoms or connections about something may be off or, whatever. But also, you can tell a lot about, that person. They may be struggling with their health. They might be struggling with something, a certain situation in their life. And so the spiritual side of that as well is a few years ago, as I started to realize that it's so much more freeing to just be open and to be honest, was thinking about how many intuitive and psychic people out there, people know things about you without you having to say that. I think that's either the most terrifying thing or it's the most liberating, because we tend to listen to a podcast the other day. It was like our society operates on shame. It operates on having to present in a certain way, having to wear a mask, pretending like everything's okay. But the thing is that everybody, the strongest people in the world, go through the same human emotions, have trauma from the past, have things that they're not proud of. Something that somebody told me the other day was like, you seem to always be fine, because I had opened my heart with them about something, and it was not received in the way that I thought that it would be received. And so I had to communicate with them and be like, look, I don't feel safe to share things with you because of this. And they were like, I thought, you always appear as strong and okay. And I was like, the strongest people in the world have things going on in their minds, we are all just human. And that's, a lot of people talk about how we put false expectations on men, to always have a strong, I'm going to take care of this, I can protect you no matter what. And yeah, while men are strong, they are also just human on the earth. And this earth, no joke, there's a lot of things going on, a lot of reasons to experience shame and heartbreak and guilt and all these emotions that we come here to experience. So what I was trying to say is that you may go into a public space, right? And you may think that you have something to hide. You may think that you are withholding something from someone, that there is parts of you that you're very uncomfortable with and that you wouldn't want other people to know. And it's so much more freeing to come to the realization that everything that anyone could know about you is completely open. It is completely up for someone knowing and understanding this about you. And for me, like I said, this was the most liberating thing that I always remind myself of too, whenever I feel like I want to be tense or something, or I'm like, it's okay to be relaxed, it's okay to be open. And you know when you are open and vulnerable, and this is another thing that I really took, one of the key pieces that I took away from my experience with the ayahuasca is, one of the most intimate parts of that experience was not sitting with the medicine itself. It was sitting in the group of people and talking and sharing experiences. Like, that was the real connection, and the real growth was communicating and sharing the experience with other people. And I was talking to one of my teachers, she was an ER physician, and we were talking about how openness is so important, because it's not just openness with, as within, so without. So if I can be open with myself around other people, I'm open to alternative means of curiosity. Like, even with health, with the body, it's so important to remain open to doing different things, like, is fat bad for us? No. Like, we've been told that it's bad for us, and you could still be, I know so many people in the mentality that fat is bad for us. Well, fat's a part of every single cell membrane. When people with low fat diets are more susceptible to Alzheimer's, dementia, all of these types of things, it's like, if we stay closed, I fall between these extremes, because with health, like, I look at it and I say, well, if you're not open, then you're closed. But that's not always the case. There is a gray area, stenosis, like the artery, the veins, the blood vessels can become tight without fully closing. But if I am under this state of restriction, I know that my flow is not happening as easily. Right? My body has to work harder, my heart has to work harder, everything has to work harder than if I were to just be completely open. And like I said, the biochemistry teaches us about our relationships with other people and ourselves. So, like, I fall into these extreme categories because when I first started getting into health and looking at all of this, I'm doing the weight training. I'm like, there's something along the lines of, like, I need to understand glucose and insulin. I need to understand this relationship, because there's something going on here with my ability to have muscle growth and to lose fat, and to feel more energetic. So I started studying that. And then I fell down the rabbit hole of cancer, how tumor cells grow in the body through constant stimulus of insulin, a growth factor, not turning off that insulin at night, having that melatonin rise, really high glucose levels. Cancer cells a lot of times they use something called the Warburg effect, where they will upregulate process of fermentation, right? And it's the same thing. Again, the cell shows us what's on the outside. Fermentation in a lot of these cancer cells, they turn on energy production from the inside of the cell. When we use our mitochondria function, we are communicating from outside. We are connecting with nature, so we cut ourselves off, we face isolation, we take all this energy and we build from the inside out. And it's just very interesting, because it's a very, like I said, I take the extremes. And so I said, okay, if this is that process, then I started looking at my diet and I was like, I need to be eating more protein and more fat so I can feed my mitochondria, I can protect my cell membrane, and have a lot more energy, So that's where I'm coming from, is always from the opposite end, because a lot of people, they sit somewhere in the middle, right? Like, we have this insulin resistance, and all we look at is like, damn, I have this weight in my midsection that I just can't get rid of. It's like, that's insulin resistance. That's one of the biggest things about insulin resistance, is it will put weight on the center of the body, because our body's protecting us from a stress response. It puts fat around our vital organs, and then we lose blood flow to the extremities, to our fingertips and our hands. And how do I get to study this? Because I had redness and dryness of my hands years ago as I was changing my diet. I was like, I'm experiencing circulatory issues, and my immune system, your skin is also your immune system. So you can tell a lot about what someone's going through by, just just looking, and we are all empathetic. Like, everyone's capable of understanding and picking up like what's not said in the background. A lot of people, we tend to just get narrowed in, and we get so narrowed and focused on what's going on in our own lives, and how stressed we are about things, and then we forget that there's like this whole world of information that is always open to us. There's ideas always flowing into us. And so anyway, I just wanted to say that, there's nothing to hide. There's nothing to feel ashamed of. And if you just practice thinking about that, like, everyone knows everything about me already. There is nothing that I would hide, even if I could. I think A Course in Miracles, like, word for word says that even if I wanted to hide something from this person or from myself, there would be nothing to hide, because everything about you is so beautiful. All the mistakes that you made, everything that you're not proud of doing, is just a beautiful learning experience. Like, there was something good that came from that, moment of darkness or confusion. We become clear, we become healthy by going through like disease states. Like, what would be the stimulus if we never experienced not feeling well? What would be I would have no stimulus as to know, like, I want to feel better, I want to feel lighter, I want to feel stronger, because I would just not know, what's the alternative, So anyway, I love you so much. I just want to remind you that we don't see ourselves accurately, and we're just trillions and trillions of cells. We look in the mirror and we just see this body, and we judge this body for ways that we wish it could be different. But underneath the body, there's trillions of these cells that are like, they work so hard for us all the time. They never ever clock out. They're always in the autoimmune issues, is the immune system is working overtime, really working hard and heavy. And so I encourage you to look into the carnivore diet, the ketogenic diet. If you are struggling, there are so many people healing from these diets. The ketogenic diet was discovered to actually treat epileptic seizures, which has a lot to do with the brain. So that automatically off the bat is incredible. But so many people have like reverse diabetes. People are using it to reverse Alzheimer's dementia symptoms. So don't take my word for it. Do your own research. But it's absolutely incredible what people are doing. So if you find yourself somewhere in the middle of those extremes where you're like, I don't feel great in my life, things aren't working out, my relationships are not working out, I need a change, look into the extremes and see how people are doing things in a different way, and stay open, so open. Let people break your heart. Let people break your heart, and then it's up to you to not tolerate that. That's one of my biggest journeys, is like, you can be a soft, vulnerable individual. It takes so much courage to take off the mask and to be who you are, and to be open to people sticking a knife in your heart. The biggest thing I can think of too is posture. When we become closed and high cortisol, we're hunched over like this. Our posture, our breathing is closed, our airway is closed, our heart is closed. And then when we're back here, like Tony Robbins said, we're secreting more testosterone, our breathing, our airways open, but more importantly, like, all the vital organs are open. Like, stick a knife in my heart if you want to. Like, show me your true colors, and like, I'm gonna go the other way if you don't treat me right. That's what it is. So anyway, I love you so much. I wish you the best of luck, and I'll catch you later.